ask everyone to turn your cell phones off and rise for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge to the flag. Father, we're thankful for this another opportunity that you've given us as elected officials to come before you and before these citizens to conduct the business of this great county. We just pray for your wisdom and for your guidance. Give us only your insight and give to us as we conduct the business laid before us this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, first item is an agenda approval. Based on the workshop that we've just had, I would like to add to our agenda this evening an item which would be, I guess it would be item number 4 under new business. The board will allow the consideration of an agreement or the consideration for staff to enter into and present an agreement to this board on December 17th, outlining the terms by which this fire station could go forward.
I don't think we need to add anything of such importance to an agenda. This is something that should have been advertised on the agenda. I've been on the record before, we don't need to put these kind of things as an addition.
And as discussed with the city of Rankin in our break, I believe that this was advertised as a workshop. The public knew that this was an item coming before the commission for discussion. And I believe that they would have been here to listen if they were interested. So what this is direction by the commission to get staff and our legal representation to prepare such a document and to go forward with an agreement to present to the commission, which would be on our agenda for the 17th.
But it's not approval of the document.
It's not approval of the document. We don't have no document to approve it.
But if you approve, then you want something so it.
It's a resolution for staff to.
Mr. Chairman, I think you can do that in committee reports and give us direction to bring it back, prepare it, bring it back to the next meeting. I don't think we need it as an action item.
And I'm okay with that.
Rankin needs it for some particular.
Adding to the agenda.
Rankin does need it, just to know that we have some interest to move forward so that they can begin there. But I'm good with the commission. I mean, whatever else. I was asking if you wanted to add that to the item.
If it's something that needs to be put on the agenda, we need to put it on there. If we're going to have a workshop and then take some sort of action, then let's put it on the agenda when we send it out and publish it. But when we add to the agenda, that throws up that red flag.
Their primary goal is that we have it on the next agenda. So if we can cover, being sure we do that through.
Then we'll do it through staff reports. My recommendation has been turned down, so I will consider, I'll take a motion from any commissioner to approve the agenda as written.
Let me get a copy of it.
I got to make a motion to approve.
Do you not have a copy?
Is it downloaded to you?
I'm assuming it's the same, but it's not.
It's the same agenda that's in the Dropbox.
Would you like me to get that from the printer?
You want me to go run a copy of that?
Is there some out front?
Yeah,
That's all I need is one to be real quick.
you can have this.
All right, I have a motion and All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried.
Show me as no vote.
Sir,
I mean, I just got it in my hand. Show me as no vote.
you didn't have it by your name, or on Dropbox?
It's the exact same.
I got it, that one here. You want
Just
to,
show me as no vote on that.
you want to read it? Will you take time to let you read the thing? Look at it.
I want to understand why, if he's saying he doesn't have it, you're saying it's in the Dropbox?
It's a, right.
What does that mean?
I have to have a printed one, because I have to scroll through it. I can't go back to the agenda as I scroll through the PDF. So I have to have a printed one. So usually there's a printed one already here. It just didn't get done today.
Okay.
You want to take time to look at it?
It has to be the same one that was advertised.
I'm certain it is, but I haven't looked at it. But apparently we're not supposed to move on with this, so show me as no vote.
All right. So Commissioner Mason is voting no to approve the agenda.
No, not no, as an abstention of vote. Show me as
We got it.
not casting any vote.
We got it.
Okay. We got it now?
We got it.
All right. Next item, consideration to approve the minutes for the November 19th, 2013 organizational structuring workshop and the November 19th, 2013 commissioner meeting. Everybody had time to look at the minutes? I'll entertain a motion at any time.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Both sets? Yes. He said both sets.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Loper, a second by Commissioner Floyd to approve both minutes for both for the workshop and the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. And I ask that public comments be held strictly to the agenda items only, please. And note that documents from this meeting are located in the clerk's office and on the Board of Commissioners website. Next item is the consent agenda. First item on the consent agenda is the consideration to approve the second reading of the Effingham County ordinance regarding emergency management. Second item, consideration to approve the second reading amending Chapter 6, alcoholic beverages of the official code of Effingham County, Article 4, operating regulations for licensed establishments. Item number 3, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Christopher Litchfield to rezone 6.05 acres located on Courthouse Road from AR1 to AR2, map number 324, parcel number 22A in the 1st District. Item number 4, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by
Deanna.
Thank you very much. Theonica J. Roberts for conditional use located at 1742 Goshen Road to allow for a home daycare, map 434, parcel number 6 in the 2nd District. Item number 5, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Lynn Michael Brennan to rezone 1 acre located at 5475 McCall Road from AR2 to B3, map number 465, parcel number 3B in the 2nd District. Item number 6, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Nancy M. Pitts to rezone 2 acres located at 720 Ardmore Oakey Road from B2 to AR1, map number 285, parcel number 6 in the 3rd District. Item number 7, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Willard J. Arnston to rezone 1.68 acres located at 1575 Union Springs Road from AR2 to AR1, map number 456, parcel number 39, in the 3rd District. And item number 8, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Zachary Rich for Susan Marchman to rezone 2.02 acres located on Springfield Stillwell Road from AR1 to AR2, map number 389, parcel number 36 in the 4th District. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I ask you to hold number 1 out? It has nothing to do with the substance. The signature block is on the wrong page. It precedes the appendices and the last few sections. It has nothing to do with the substance, but the signature block is not on the final page of this ordinance. I would ask you to hold out number 1 as old business, number 3, so that you can approve it with that change. The stipulated block be moved.
All right, it's been suggested by council that we remove item number 1 from the ordinance, or number 1 under the consent agenda, and move it to item number 3 of old business so that we can point out a small discrepancy in the signature block. So that we're not voting on that as it is currently printed.
We withdraw that motion in a second.
I think that your motion and seconds should probably be restated.
Well, yeah, I think we need to make a motion to move make a motion to move the consent agenda item number 1 to new business number 3.
Is that your motion?
Motion. I knew we were over.
I have a motion on the floor
Old
to
business, I'm sorry,
remove
old
item
business.
number 1 under the consent agenda from the consent agenda item to item number 3 of old business.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Ms. Lowe. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Jones. Boy, I'm terribly sorry. I was looking right at you, wasn't
That's fine.
I? You wish.
Close enough.
All right, I have a motion and a second now that we've had a little funny. All in favor? Any opposed? Item number 1 so moved to item number 3 under old business.
Okay, very good.
Being removed from the consent agenda, I will entertain a motion on the balance of the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we approve items number 2 through item number 8 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jones. Second by Commissioner Lower.
You got it right.
All right.
You good, Bill?
I'm trying. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Moving on then to old business. First item, consideration to approve the second reading, amending Chapter 75 of the Official Code of Effingham County. Mr. Leota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason this is not on the old business, not on the consent agenda, and is on old business instead, staff has made a slight change to the body of the ordinance that was approved at the last meeting. Of course, last meeting you approved the change of the meter fees from $500 to $550. In between those two meetings, in the process of putting together documents for this meeting, staff did notice that the ordinances for water and sewer at no point mention the county's auto metering system. So it was believed that it should be at least codified in some way, shape, or form, just to cover the base, such that everybody understands that all meters and boxes and MXUs must be compliant with the county's AMR system, so that we can read them by radio, so that we don't have to read them manually. Obviously, all of our meters satisfy that at this current point, so this is nothing about trying to change anything at all. It's just covering a base.
All right, so we would be amending the first reading to that which is highlighted in red, which is...
It's just the additional sentence, or yes, the highlights in red in the first two sentences are previous from last week, or last meeting, excuse me. The additional sentence at the bottom is all that's being added.
All right, no other changes.
That's correct.
Any questions from the board?
One thing I was thinking about in this, and since we're trying to cover all the bases,
Yes, sir.
should we put anything in there about irrigation meters? I know from time to time, people do put an irrigation meter in separate. Do you think we should put anything in there to cover that now?
In as much as irrigation meters can be drinking water meters or reuse meters, they're really covered under both sections already. We don't generally sell, and let me try to clarify exactly what you're saying. While we have reuse irrigation meters, and we also have some meters on our system that are for common areas that have no other use except irrigation, we don't have the option of having a second drinking water meter on the same piece of property as an irrigation meter. So just to be clear is what we're talking about.
What I'm thinking of is the situations where people are using them just for irrigation, or they want to meter their irrigation so they're not paying the sewer fees.
We do not offer that as of currently. There are absolutely no situations like that currently. There are only about 4 or 5 common areas that are under irrigation, separate from reuse, that is. Irrigated by drinking water that is billed separately. It was not even billed separately because there's only one bill, because it is just a common area that has no other use except irrigation.
So we wanted to address it this time.
I really don't.
That's more of a billing.
Okay.
I agree. I really think that what we have is perfectly fine unless someone else feels different.
All right, so that I understand, are you saying that we should allow for irrigation meters?
There's places that do, because your water bill is directly proportionate to your sewer. Your sewer bill is tied to your water bill.
That's correct.
And some places, you can get an irrigation meter that's strictly for irrigation, and you don't pay the sewer fee.
And that's very true, and other places do allow that. And what I would tell the board is that I would only recommend that if the situation was that our rates actually covered the cost of operating the water and sewer system. And if that was the case,
Under a second reading like this, that's
No.
a discussion item.
okay.
Any other questions as it pertains to the second reading? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the modified ordinance as proposed with the additional changes in red.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Item number 2, under old business, consideration to approve the new travel policy.
Mr. Chairman, we discussed this at your last meeting. It was able, I guess, to this meeting to be able to make some additional changes. Unfortunately, to this point, I really didn't receive any input from the commissioners, so I hope that means y'all have it. You will see in the copy, there's now some things that show up in green, red, and blue, that multicolored here, trying to be festive for the holidays. So we have made some additional changes to this document from what you saw previously, trying to address what we understood to be some of your concerns at the last meeting. Additionally, behind this policy now, there are several pages of financials. The first one is an overview of the past, well, from 2009, 5 years expenditures in travel, and they're categorized only by department. So you can see what each department spent. Behind that, we drilled down to 1 year, just 13 year, of what's in each of those departments. You can see the individual charges. And we only did that for the 5 biggest departments. As you can see, there's a lot of pages. We didn't want to have a whole detail for $200 out of $120,000. So we took the 5 biggest. The 5 biggest, and they're highlighted or underlined in the 13 actual. So it's well, departments by they're labeled on the top.
5 biggest by spending or 5 biggest by number of employees?
By spending, by dollars. Correct. And for instance, the biggest are the commissioners, which was $26,000, tax assessor $18,364, tax commissioner $15,347, general government $13,051, sheriff's department $5,449. The balance of that is everybody else. For instance, solicitors is $2,000. So we compared to the 26. We didn't drill down into the details of those. We can certainly get it, it's just a lot better. We just wanted to give y'all an insight of what the majority of this money was being spent for in the detail. That is something that was asked for. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the policy as written, it's just information for y'all to consider. Trying to think some of the changes that were made from the last meeting. My color, it depends on who prints it. Number 3 was rewritten. It was basically the same thought that was in, we just rewrote that to clarify that particular section. And there were a couple pieces in here. Number 12, I believe, that was clarified based on input from the attorney, just to clarify the part of control over elected officials, basically, make that part a little more clear, that the board doesn't control their budgets. They set the budget, they don't control the same. To better clarify that particular portion of it. So number 3 was already in there. You can see it was expanded a little bit more and make it a little more clear. The strikeout below is what it was. Number 7 was to try to address some of the board's concerns about getting a better control over what goes on. In the way that it's currently is written, the county administrator may refer travel expenses to the board if they're in excess of 500, and it may also refer travel expenses for employee time which do not comply with the terms of this policy. So if someone asks for something outside of the terms of policy, and or that's over $500, they can be referred to the board. And we can certainly change may to shall if y'all want. We were just trying to do it as may so that it didn't get necessarily as bogged down when you have to approve each and every one. If you want to, we can do that. If you want to be notified of whatever the board so chooses, we can certainly do. But as currently written, it gives the administrator the ability to do it for either requests above 500 and or requests that don't comply with the terms of this policy. And then number 12, for budgeting purposes, elected officials are requested to submit their travel request to the county administrator. Then approval requests which comply will not be unreasonably withheld. Requests which do not comply may require consideration by the board. So again, we didn't say no, we just said if it doesn't comply with policy, we'll take it to the board, let y'all decide. It is for budgeting purposes, please submit your stuff. We know we can't necessarily stop them, nor are we trying to, but it allows us to maintain some control over seeing where those funds go, some transparency, but clarifies the point that we're not trying to stop them doing. And other than that, the policy is as written. We just try to clarify those few points.
But what's in our book envelops all of the attorney's concerns.
Correct, yes. Elizabeth had 2 things on those 2 places we're changing. I also point out, just for y'all's knowledge, that the last 2 pages of this item are the travel request forms that this refers to as being filled out. We just wanted y'all to see what they said on it, what information we're asking for, what it looked like. There's a per diem request form behind it, just for information. So the board wants more or less information, we can certainly offer that form, but this is the form that we're currently in.
If, like number 5, if prior approval is not received, then does it have to come to the board? Would you interpret it that way?
For number 5,
Yeah. Well, not number 5, obviously. Basically, if this isn't followed, because prior, not receiving prior approval would not be following this policy, and would therefore default to the board for approval.
correct.
That makes sense.
Correct. You'd have to have prior approval before the travel actually occurred, before the expense happened.
And if that didn't occur, but the travel was still needed to go forward, it would come to the board.
That would be a violation of the policy, yes, that would
Okay.
certainly come to the board.
I mean, there may be some tiny thing or something.
And there may be, from time to time, we get those where somebody becomes privy to an event that's happening in Savannah that they have for continuing education, it keeps them from driving to Macon, and it's inside of the 2 weeks they have to go. I mean, those things do happen.
Yeah.
In this report, or on page 16 of 32, it's one of the sheets that has the details.
Yes,
16 of 32, there's names beside blocks. And is that section beside the name Ziegler, is that expenses that Ziegler did, those like 22 hours or so? Is that what that is?
Yes.
How did Ziegler travel in June of 13?
I was wondering that myself.
I'll have to,
There's a couple of them that actually are to the right. And
a bunch of
someone else's
those, you
name.
have somebody's
Looks like
name
that's four.
inside, and have other people be covered in it also.
That's actually four. so-
Tifton and April.
It looks to me like the description is wrong on there. If you look at the 3701-1,
To the right, so-
I think when I had staff do this, that if you actually look at the events, it's actually force. It was just mislabeled.
We're actually four is above that, so maybe.
Might be me.
That's what maybe.
But on there where my name's at, there's other people on there also. Jones is on there, and I don't know who else is on there.
So that's kind of what I was looking at, these total balances by each of us kind of combined.
I can go back and check. The coding that comes on them comes from those people that are submitting them, and we do try and check that, but I will make sure that staff double checks and moves them to where they belong.
Well, again, Brantley, 3/6 of 13. That's on page 17.
But you see here, it's the same transaction.
I don't know, I didn't necessarily review what staff had done on this. I'll go back and check the actual numbers to make
So
sure.
really, the names to the side really don't mean anything, because I'm looking at.
Understand.
Yeah, it says Kiefer, and then I
Yeah,
see
you
it
have
on
to
the
look at
side,
the actual.
Wendell, yeah.
The top section in the middle has names on them, those are accurate.
So it's got to be listed by something other than by the person.
Yes, it is.
I'll go back and look at it myself and get you an updated copy.
Yeah, 'cause it's not ready to spend a bunch of money.
I know that. You're also on there too, Jones and everybody else is on there.
But I can remember dusting everything anywhere.
Just for my information, travel expenses, is it public record if any citizen was to come and ask, how much money does
It's public record.
this elected official spend on travel? Is it public?
I would think so.
Absolutely.
Originally, when we did this, as far as the distribution, it was for that reason, because we had gotten requests and it was so time consuming to go back and try to slot it by individual person. And we would get it just for an individual commissioner or just for an individual person. I can remember going through hours of trying to decipher, who had necessarily gone where, so.
Well, you better take all those names off of mine then.
I will make sure to go through it.
It doesn't make any difference to me, you can leave them like that.
It's not complete, but for the vast majority, the travel that the commissioners do typically is what is required of us by law to have our training. For the
Seems
most
to
part.
give you
That's
the first
correct.
couple of years on required.
It's not fun.
So if it was an issue for an elected official that was spending money that they possibly should not spend, any citizen could have access to that and make it public.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and here's something on page 29 of 32. And this caught my eye because it's got my name on it. 5/28/13, which was June
13.
5 to be made.
Okay, that's what I said. Just misspelled. It's got me, about midway to the page, to a third way down, as unless there's another Mason, with something at Outback. And I have never been to an Outback in my life.
It's probably, this is the sheriff's department, so there's so many people, it probably is another Mason. I don't know that, I can verify, but I'm sure that's what that is.
What
Because you
page?
see, you got Mason and Richard Bush together, right?
2932, there is someone. Okay.
That's the sheriff's, because that's under Department 17, which is the sheriff's department.
Okay.
Yeah, then you got Bush and Lewis all down there. It
I think,
probably-
it might not be a bad idea if you rerun this, at least run it for us independently, so we can look for those sort of things and see
Yes,
if, to make sure that there's not something, because in case somebody did look.
I would like the record to be clear.
Yeah, because
Accurate.
I never looked at it. That would be bad.
All right, so in doing all of this, does staff feel that this is the best product at the present time to bring before this board, or is there any other changes that, in y'all's ultimate wisdom, have seen while you were preparing this?
Oh, you asked me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I was looking to see if Adam was sitting on his
I was
hands.
hoping y'all talk to yourselves. No, I mean, the only other issue that I have heard raised in the past is the, and I'm trying to see the number here. Number 11, where the board approves the board's travel and commission or administrator approves basically everyone else's. That's completely up to the board, how y'all want to proceed. Whether you want to continue to do so or treat that differently. I mean, obviously,
I'm
any
okay
of
with
the
the
subject
board approving all travel.
Do what?
Well, I said I'm okay with the board approving all travel.
Well, I am too. The thing is, we don't have the authority to do that.
Well, I'm not talking about, no.
So basically, that's what we're doing, unless you don't want the administrator to have that right. You want everything brought in here.
At least on reporting, a good, clean reporting.
See, that's what I'm thinking, if we do this, can we not be presented in our reports on a monthly basis
Yeah.
what is being done? And that way we can see what's
That's an excellent tip.
what's going out the door on a monthly basis, and
We
then
can give
would
that,
trigger whether we need to do something else.
we can give that detail to you on a monthly basis. That's no issue whatsoever. One of the things I will call your attention to is, and why the reason I kind of pressed the point before is, I think these forms are working very well, and you'll see the difference in the decrease of the budget and the actual over the last 5 years, and I think that's significant. And I think that's because we have put these pieces of transparency in there where there are checks and balances, someone is reviewing this information, and we are going through those steps. And I think it's significant as you see the decrease.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I appreciate the good work that y'all do to accomplish that, but if we have to approve our own travel, I think I agree with the sentiments of Commissioner Kiefer. I mean, why should we not approve everyone? That we would get so bogged down in doing that we would get nothing else done.
But
But I do believe that the report would serve the same thing, and it would give us something that if it triggers something, then we can address it.
it's also additional transparency because the citizens would have an opportunity to see that monthly report is given to us.
So if the board agrees with that, should that actually be put into the travel policy to make it known to every employee that an itemized list of travel will be presented to the board on a monthly basis for review?
I think that would be absolutely appropriate.
I think that would be a good thing to add, because I think even though we might not have authority over other elected officials, I think that if they know that there's going to be another set of eyes rather than an administrator, that they might could get it passed. might further cut some of this. And I'm not gonna call it wasteful, but I think there's always places to cut.
I would also suggest that we perhaps put those on the forms, because a lot of the policy itself may be missed. So, you know, the fact that that's going to be reported to the board on a monthly basis, let's also designate that on the
I
forms.
believe that is good disclosure and a good idea to have it put onto the expense report form itself.
How far will that drill down? I mean, just about department as in budget department? Or further?
Individuals.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just to know what I'm going to be traveling for.
We don't do it individually by each department per person, simply because we have, you know, 15, 20, 30 people in those departments. However, we do have those forms segregated on S Drive, where all of those forms are put into and situated so that we can go back and look at those forms indicative of these costs. So you would get a detailed listing, and we could probably put some sort of description in there where you could tell exactly what, you know, the person is and so forth, to be able to drill back down.
Just trying to make the information useful.
Well, the more information we have, the better decisions we can make. Any other suggestions or thoughts?
When you were talking about the form, did you mean add it to the tribal request form that would be given to the board?
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
You were talking about adding it to the policy to make it it's a monthly report given by finance to the board.
That was one, and then she recommended two.
Yeah, and the second was to put it on the actual form.
on the
Correct.
actual report that this will be submitted on a monthly basis.
I was trying to buy time cost you about.
And it just occurred to me how this happened, while I'm looking at the wrong policy. This is the one that we actually got the comments back after the books were printed.
I
And
thought
it was
so.
placed in your book, so we need to make sure we're looking at the right document. And if y'all don't have it, we want to table this and let's come back next time, we can certainly do that. And we'll have this other piece added in there. Because I was getting extremely confused, because a lot of the language that Elizabeth had was not in what I was reading, y'all. The one I've got has a lot more, and it deals with paying, or with the administrator being able to approve employees, but not necessarily elected officials. She went into detail about that in here.
Yeah, and
So-
see, I was trying to cross-reference this to that, and I couldn't find a lot of this, so.
Correct. So there were two places that were changed, so, and that's the one that went out after everything. It should have been slid in your book. Now, we all would drop box, I don't know how it happened, so we're probably better off if y'all don't mind, let's just table it and make changes, let's make sure we got the right one.
Is there any other changes or recommendations by any board member? If not, I would entertain a motion to table this again with the direction that the staff make these other changes as recommended by the legal representation, along with those that we've discussed this evening.
Which
The
I mean,
December 17th
And
meeting?
bring it back. to
yeah,
December
it's done, I'm sorry, it was done, it was done after the books were printed in
What is the date of that meeting?
17.
December 17th.
Yeah, it won't take 10 minutes to do it right now.
It really won't. I mean,
Yeah, but I feel more comfortable, because it was confusing as the books were already printed, so you had two copies of the books, so I want to make sure y'all have the right one.
well, I think it'd be easier doing that than trying to take action on something and saying, this is going to be put, this is going to be.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry about that.
Can I have a motion to table it under those circumstances?
I make a motion that we table the travel policy to the December 17th meeting so that we have an opportunity to review the changes by the attorney and add the additions that were recommended tonight.
Motion and a second, very well put. All in favor? Any opposed? So tabled. All right. Back under old business, the item number 3 that was added was the item number 1 from the consent agenda. I think council can tell us his concerns and,
My apologies, we asked you to move this to full business and what's on, so that you could direct as part of your approval that the signature block of the ordinance be moved to the end of the ordinance following the appendices. Because it would look funny in the minute books if someone were going through it, they saw a signature page, and then there were several more pages of the ordinance behind it, they might not notice it.
So page 13 of 13 in our book should become page 12 of 13, and the signature page should become page 13 of 13.
Signature block being
Just the
added to
signature
the
block.
No, sir, you're just gonna move just,
End of the appendix.
yeah, everything after section 1842, be it further or saying that section will go to section 30, to page 13.
I would ask you also to sections 1843 through 18102, which are reserved, I would move those up following 1842. Then the appendices would appear next, and then the signature block. You see page 13 would precede pages 10, 11, and 12, and then the signature block would appear at the end.
Gotcha. Mr. Meyer, if you're standing there, did you have something that you wanted to add? No, sir. Okay.
Just in case.
Did not want you or anybody else to feel slighted. Anyone else here wishes to talk about this? That order cover it? You got it down?
I had it down as far as moving the signature page to the end, but after, when you started the rest, I didn't catch that really.
Yeah.
How are you saying you need that worded?
Page 13.
We need a motion to approve subject to the following changes. Sections 1843 through 18102 should be relocated immediately following section 1842,
Okay,
and to be followed by the appendices, to be followed by the signature block.
okay. You ready for the motion?
I am ready.
I make a motion that we approve this subject to the following changes, moving 1843 to 18102, directly following 1842, followed by the appendices and the signature page. Something.
That's it.
So this is proper order.
What you're making a motion for us to approve is the second reading of this ordinance with those changes.
Correct.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried with those changes. All right, that completes old business. First item under new business, consideration to approve a resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2013 capital improvement element update. Mr. Shaw.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have created the capital improvement element. We have transmitted it to the CRC and the state. They have approved it. Both entities have approved it, and now we need to adopt it. And that is the resolution before you.
This is Katie, but the only thing I would ask is the clerk change my spelling of my name before I sign.
With an A?
Yeah, my mama took one look at me and said that's all she was having, so that's the way she spelled it.
My apologies.
It's true. Then dropped me on the head. All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve as stated.
Second. Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Item number 2, impact fees, consideration to approve to use impact fees to fund the jail project.
Evening.
Ms. Joanne?
Yes, sir. As you recall, at our last meeting, we discussed the impact fee situation and the fact of, exactly what we were going to do and which projects and redoing the study itself. When we looked at that information, we believe that there's about $85,000 that we can actually use for the jail, and we wanted to go ahead and appropriate those funds for the jail project as we're in the midst of that. It would allow us to have additional funds based upon whether or not the overall work on the jail and the sheriff's department comes in at budget or not at budget. If you recall, when we approved the original jail fund and jail project, we voted just on the jail portion of it, not on the sheriff's office portion of it. And so there's some decisions still to be made on that. So at this point, we just simply want to use these impact fees to cover costs that we are currently having on the jail project itself, since that they are in the study and can be used, and that will reduce the overall impact fees that we have on hand at this point.
All right, I have a couple of questions. Number 1, the jail has been built as a Tier 1 project on splash dollars, correct?
Correct.
Would this money be used to fund an overage on that project, or is it going to simply mean that we spend less of splash dollars on that project?
If you recall, we had 2 different parts. We had one that was 16.4, I believe it was originally budgeted, and an additional 1,000,001. The 1,000,001 was for financing and other charges. Because of the fact that we only approved the jail portion of that project, we actually had more cost of the jail project than we had dollars at that time. So there was a decision made to perhaps scale back the sheriff's office portion of that. Y'all still have not made those decisions as to exactly what we're going to do on the sheriff's portion of that. So at this particular point in time, I can't tell you whether or not this is going to be additional funds or not. We haven't gotten far enough into that.
My whole purpose of asking the question is, in my way of thinking, if we use this to replace money that's being spent from Splash, and we're going to lose 27% of this $85,000 to the cities. Am I right? Or am I thinking wrong?
I don't believe so, because the jail project as a whole, the 16,000,004 was inclusive of not only the contract, but the financing charges, the interest, and so forth.
Okay.
So I believe we can apply this wherever we choose to apply it within any of those costs.
I just don't want to be giving away any of this money,
Understood? Yes, sir.
and that's why I asked the question.
Yes,
If
sir.
we use that $85,000 as part of it, we will be giving away part of it. Because the money that we would receive from Splash,
There were costs outside of these, let me put it this way, there were costs outside of the 16 million that was under the service delivery.
Okay.
The likelihood is that this project will not cost 16 million, period. It'll be 16 million plus.
Correct.
16 million is promised and lost.
Correct.
There's going to be a plus most likely, especially with the fact that we had to pull aside the sheriff's admin.
Not only that, but this board has the right to choose to use any other SPOS funds as it chooses.
I'm not exactly sure how that works. That's why that's why I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted your assurance that I wasn't going to be giving away part of this money.
Understood.
Okay.
Are you going to, did you say you're going to make it 200?
That's my goal. Now, the number we're working with is 16,425. Because that's 425 is jail construction staffing fund. But I think right now, hopefully we'll be bringing the sheriff's office to you next year, but I think we're close. I'm making 16,425.
with the sheriff's offices in the 16,425? And that includes financing or it does not?
Does not.
Does not.
Okay.
Does not, so
So
financing
that's
cost is
over
going
by
to be
a
over.
million right there.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you answered my question. Because I'm in favor of moving the money, I mean, getting it out the impact fee account. I just don't want to lose any of it.
We would technically do this as we've done other projects where those funds are basically a portion of the overall cost, and we would put this back into our SPOS funds for SPOS funds that we've already paid.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion?
Make a motion that we approve staff recommendation alternative number 1.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Next item, consideration to approve an extension for the fiscal year in 2013 audit, which we always expected to have to do.
Yes, sir.
And per the previous conversation, we can do that without any penalties within, but this would be the last time that we could do that.
We cannot go beyond 2 consecutive years.
Right.
So we would have to have a year in between where we met. This will be only the second year that I know of in the last 7 that we've had this
So there's
issue.
nothing with doing this that's going to hurt us.
No, sir. They are on site. They have been to the agencies. I did get a call from her this afternoon late and plan on speaking with her in the morning about the rest of the schedule.
If we approve this, we still have the opportunity, if by some miracle they get it finished and done, we still don't have to file for the extension if they can get it and get it submitted.
Understood.
But it would be a miracle.
It would be a miracle at this point because we always bring that back before you as a board, before we actually file that. And
Which
so,
technically to be put on the agenda for the 17th.
Correct.
We would have to have it at the end of this week.
The only way
That's
for that to
correct.
happen, we'd have to have a special call meeting to approve,
yes.
When do we do that?
like,
Christmas Eve?
And actually, they have not even started on any of ours. They have only started on the agencies.
Well, they told us when they started that it would be a very slim possibility. If there's no questions, or I'll entertain a motion. Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So carried. The time is 10 minutes after 6. That is the last item of our agenda, other than commissioners and staff report.
Well, I've got a few reports here.
Well, I'm telling, other than, so the length, the point I'm trying to make from now on is the length of time that we stay here is left up to staff. Go ahead, Toss.
Practice my office beat and speed reading. Questions for the board, straw poll question, I guess. We have been kicking around several projects for the short-term work program, building master plan, that have been dragging on for quite a while, and all seem to hinge on one another, Ulmer Park being one of those. And a lot of that depends on this building, future building plans, and what we intend to do with office space and where that space intends to be located. In understanding we have certain issues with committees and the way they're formed, and it effectively becomes meetings advertised the same way, so why not just hold it on board? Does the board have any desire to create a committee, to be all of you, because of the way we have to do it, to investigate building master plans and how that will tie into the whole? In other words, staff has come up with some different solutions. We believe we've got it down to pretty much all that's out there. Options of, we could all move here, we could all move there, the social services building, how things could work, and if we could get more of a committee setting outside of workshops and invest a little bit of time into it. Once we make that decision, we can make a decision on Ulmer Park, where the parking goes and so forth. So that being asked, is there any interest of a couple of you to donate your time for such a worthy, lofty cause?
I'll do it. The only thing about a committee is that we need to try to remember and do is there's really no point having a committee of two go and meet and then not bring it back to the full board. That's the whole reason to send a delegation to do this, but so it needs to come back. So if we're going to do this, then we need to say, all right, well, at some point, it's going to be a recommendation of that committee to help explain it when we're discussing it, right? Rather than trying to disseminate it individually or whatever.
Just understood, yes, right here. We got committee of one. Effingham,
It's just something that you feel doesn't need, you'd rather do in small committee groups than bring to the whole board? Because
there's so many
I'm going to
different,
serve on every committee because I want to be informed. And see, that was the problem like when we were building the jail. They did these jail committees and they'd go have these long meetings, but then they'd come present completely to us again because the people that weren't on those committees wanted all that information. And it's just, this, to me, what we're talking about is a fairly big subject. I can serve on the committee, I'd be glad to. But if I don't, then I'm going to want to be
Yeah, I guess,
represented.
and I agree with very completely, is what we've done in the past is we would have this, a committee, but then it's not brought back, so we might have had to have a workshop of some sort anyway.
And have a full presentation.
Yeah, so,
We do it twice.
I understand, I guess the thought process being there's so many iterations and variations of this thing that exists, that if we had 2 or 3 commissioners that said there's absolutely no way I could ever support scenario Z, we just throw it out, we don't bring it back to the board. And if you get down to, well, maybe scenario W, X, and T work, then we could bring those scenarios back to the full board.
We can do it here, that's
Every permutation creates a different problem. So if you say, well, we can move this one in this building, or we can move this one out. And then you say, well, what about that building? And then it just continues on down the line because there's playing with a bunch of different chess pieces. So I think the idea was to get it whittled down to there was enough that seemed plausible to bring to the full board.
Staff can do that. And I can figure out the problem, throw the problems out, and then bring the.
And we can, the only hesitation is then we're offering you limited solutions to a more complex issue. So again, just a question, if the desire to do all that in here in a workshop, we can certainly move forward with that.
it's tough. It's tough because you can't have enough people there to make some sort of decision. You know,
When I was on
like
school,
throwing out options.
when I was on school board, we elected to not have committee meetings because they all had to be advertised, so we might as well all meet together.
And that's what I was about to say, I mean, effectively, it's the same as a meeting, we could have a workshop during the middle of the day if you felt more comfortable calling it. That's basically, you know, I guess what we're asking is could we have workshops, not necessarily at 4 o'clock before the meeting where we're limited in time, but we can have them more frequently or as need be. Because effectively, it's the same thing, you're right, it has to be advertised, published, you know, it's the same as a board meeting, same as a workshop.
Bottom line is this commission needs to sit down and make a plan for where we expect to be out here. I think the commission or this county has, through the years, always reacted to problems. We need a solution for this right here, so let's go buy an old school. Well, we need this, so let's do this, let's do, you know. We need to figure out where we need to be 2 years, 3 years, whatever from now, and figure out how to get there.
And that is long-term planning by an entire board.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Now, realizing that we've got elections next year, you know, that could change. Who knows? But we need to start that process somewhere. And I can understand staffs wanting to have committees because it helps to take the why in the world did you suggest such a thing off of staff's back? Because I know that can easily happen. We ask staff to do things, and then whenever it's brought to us, there might not be but one person on this board that really feels like that's a good idea. And it kind of, I know that's a tough job for staff to do. However, it's a hard thing to get 5, 6 people to agree on something as well.
My thought is, we don't want to do the same thing that we've got right now with the fire department issue. We don't want to focus on this on the park issue without thinking about, are we ever going to move administration from this building to another facility? Because that directly impacts the parking aspect.
Which is going to start the very first part of the issue that's got to be decided by this board, and that can't be decided by a committee, and that is, where do we need to be? Do we need to be here in close proximity to the judicial complex? Can we be at the other end of Springfield? Can we be here? Can we be here? That's what we've got to decide so that we know then how to proceed. Now, until staff has that basic factor, everything else is hard for staff to come up with scenarios as how to do it. And I think from what I've heard, and I've only been here this year, but I think this is not a new problem. And I think that's what's happened for a long time. And it gets started and then nothing happens. And we wind up with the leaking roof, and we wind up with the mold growing on the walls, and we wind up with bad environments for our staff to work in. And that can't continue. We've got to come up with a plan and go forward. Now, I think I agree with Commissioner Jones that to have a committee to do that is not going to work. We need a full board to sit down and hound out that very first idea to figure out where we feel like we've got to be and why, and then go forward. In our conversations, this is no secret, we've talked about some different locations, we've talked about different buildings. I've gotten some numbers on some things, but that doesn't mean a thing unless this board has that direction, that would be a good location, or this would be a good location. So.
And that's what I'm getting at about having the full board knowledgeable, because, you've had a comment here before about, well, this is the first I'm hearing of it,
That's right.
And that doesn't feel good to any of us.
No.
So I don't think we want to be in that position.
Unfortunately, that's the conjugate of what you said is let staff whittle all this down. That's kind of what we're having to do, and that's how the commission gets left out of it. So, it's a tough situation. I agree, it really is.
But
How do you do it?
let me say this, I'm sorry. It doesn't have to be that way, because you're able to come to us and say, okay, staff looked at this, and here's why staff discounts this. But if you want to consider it, but here's the problems we see with it. Like, there's a lot of hours of work that I don't think we need us in committees to do that part of it, but
Not really. It's just how's it presented. Then a committee reports to the standing workshop, and we can work all those things out, to keep y'all more apprised of what's going on.
But see, I've asked the question, and I'm not even convinced that I know the answer as to where we need to be. If the central site that we have access to now is a good, viable site to put concerted services and everything, then we direct that. Is that same area out there a good place for administration too? Is that? Do we need to be here? I don't know the answers. I know that this county has worked part here, part yonder, part here for a long time. And I have run numbers, and I'm convinced that we can put government together and we can save money and we can operate in a cohesive central location and save enough money to pay for a facility. I'm convinced of that.
Well, we have talked about this in the past. We haven't this year, but we have talked about this in the past, about some of the ideas and things that could be, especially when the school was being talked about, when the school board was wanting to give us that school, or do a trade. And, one of the ideas that had been knocked around was obviously this downtown area right here is very congested, parking around this building. This building itself is, just getting old. So there was talk about, in the future, what we would do with, say, Public Works and a maintenance facility over there at Public Works area, the fuel islands, all that kind of stuff.
And I think one of the directions that I remember as being what I thought was a good idea when it was suggested is looking at where the public works area is as being an area for the administration area, because public works can be anywhere. Fuel island, can still stay where it is, but, I don't know that wouldn't be a good idea. So, but it has been talked about, and it's one of those things that until you know how you can pay for it, you can have a plan, but
Is it anywhere in the short-term rental plan? Or
It's,
loss listing, or?
it's hidden away somewhere.
There's some delays.
It's
There's bits and pieces.
Can we unhide it?
Well, to answer your question, in all seriousness, there's $962,000 in there for the social services building. And that's one of the things that we play with, is how can we do that without spending $962,000? And we believe we can put everybody except DFACs in that second wing.
One wing.
Yeah, with paint and maybe buffing the floors. It's a functional wing that works right now. So we wouldn't spend the $962. That money could go somewhere. I mean, it could be a new building, it could be anything we talked about tonight. That's up to the board's discretion. We've looked at taking DFACs out, moving them over, making some modifications, moving this building where DFACs is, but there's some additions that will have to occur for that to happen too, and there's a cost associated with that. So is it worth the cost there plus the cost over here, or do you spend a little bit more and get a new building? And those are some of the things we need to flesh out, and we have a very approximate cost. We took costs based on what we think per foot. We did estimates on building square foot based on 5 square foot in office times 10 offices of 50 square foot, and that's a number. That's as far as we've gotten. So we have some of that in place. I believe we have everything to bring to y'all to start this discussion. And again, it sounds to me like y'all prefer to just do it up here, and it's perfectly fine with us. And we can do that. It's just a matter of if y'all want to wait till next year, if you don't pick it bogged down with your next agenda, we'll pick it up in January and take a look at it.
I'm good with having a workshop on the 17th. Y'all want to do it? I mean, I think it's something.
We can do it 17th.
You're going to keep on going until you get to the immediate issues, I'm sure.
If you talk about these reports tonight.
Like rain, roughly.
Well, the roof, we have a point pond growing upstairs. That we currently have a trash can under, so it's okay for the moment. The roof up here has been patched 6 times, 8 times, I don't know, half a dozen times over the last year or so, and it just continuously gets worse. Every time we patch it, it moves over a few feet, and we're at a point of 16,000 was the lowest.
I believe 16 to 17.
$16,000, $17,000 is the lowest quote we got to replace the roof on this particular building.
And that's still not a comprehensive fix, is it? That's
What are you talking about, possibly vacating this building completely?
That's a possibility. I mean, that's a solution. I mean,
And quite frankly, we've survived the last 3 leaks in anticipation of that's a decision that needs to be made at some point. We didn't want to spend $16,000 on a new roof if there was an idea in the next 2 years, but we're at a point now where it's.
A new roof on this building would be a lot cheaper than building a new building like this one is. Brick on the outside, so I don't know what else would go wrong with it.
Well, like the holes in the floors, and I mean, there's a lot of issues.
and I think one of the issues with the roof is the walls coming apart. It's leaving us,
The walls are separated
which
away
is
from the
not allowing it to run behind it. So there's some other issues, but it's certainly cheaper to build this, absolutely. But that is an issue we face currently. Right now, we have a problem upstairs, which is why I vacated and went down here, if anybody has noticed that. I don't know if it's black, but it's mold that's growing up there.
It's mildew.
It's mildew. And we have the same issue with building inspections at this point because we share a common leak. It's not physically running in their office, but whatever's growing is growing immediately above their wall and an open ceiling. So there's some issues there we'll have to deal with. And that's
Well, I
what,
think no matter what, we need to fix, we need to do some type of fix, right?
right.
And
Maybe not replace the whole roof, but we're not ready to move right this second, so you gotta do some kind of fix, because you can't stay in that scenario.
We're gonna have to replace the whole roof. It's a single ply membrane on top of another membrane roof.
So if you're gonna stay here a year while we're doing something else, you gotta replace the roof anyway, yes or no?
Yes, we were hoping to patch it.
I'm just saying, you said maybe not replace the whole roof. I just wanted to say it was gonna have to be the whole roof.
Yeah. We had hoped in the past that the patches would get us through the next year or so, it just didn't happen.
That would just be the roof on one addition.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Not the whole
That's
building.
One addition.
flat roof over there, that's right. Yes, sir. Not the entire building, correct. So with no objection, we'll replace the roof. And we will bring, 17th, if that's what y'all want to do, we'll bring back. So
Has the roofing contractors done this, or is it, we've been trying to do this inside?
Roofing contract.
They can't seem to get it.
I think when they patch it, it tears at a different location is what happens. The patch holes with right side, it tears.
Patch
membranes.
pulls.
They get to the point you can't.
Yeah, the membranes.
You have to go from seam to seam somewhere,
But you tell them new roof.
or a section, like it splits off.
Well, we'll do that, we'll bring back some building master plan information for y'all on the 17th to move forward. Effingham Day Capital is coming up in January, obviously we have to have the reservations in January halftime. I just want to put it on y'all's radar. If you happen to know already, if you plan on attending, please let the clerk know, because at some point this has to come back before you to approve your own trust, based on the policy we just talked about. So we will need it on the agenda. I believe we can get on the first meeting in January.
Yes, that's
So-
what it is.
So we have a little bit of time, I just want to put on y'all's radar,
Does the board need to consider whether or not it's advantageous for us to continue to do that?
But we try to do that, that would be nine travel.
I mean, is there any board member here that,
What they've always done in the past is they've set up meetings with DOT and
DOT and EPD was last year, I believe we also met with Merchant Capital.
they've set up
So we-
specific meetings so that we don't go and just waste our time.
Yeah,
No.
we actually have gotten stuff done when we was up there. Meeting with GFA, we've gotten some answers on things,
Every time. And,
And other than that though, other than what we've done by setting up our meetings outside of the chamber's agenda, it's hard to measure to go.
if you didn't do that,
If we didn't do what we're talking about, it would be hard to measure what you're actually benefiting by doing it. The one thing that that just drives me nuts is every year them using the Ritz-Carlton for their, and it's just talking about cost. The cost is astronomical there.
$160.
We want to have to take a taxi to everywhere we're going anyway. So I've said in the past, I ought to just stay somewhere else. If I've got to take a taxi to get there, there's no reason to stay at the Ritz-Carlton. There's a few events that are there that were receptions and stuff, but
And the
we're
bus,
talking about money
the
per
bus
hour.
league that goes to the
carries you to the
facility.
depot, that's that's it, other than that.
well, I mean, we were talking about travel expense. I mean, are the meetings, I was there this year. I mean, are the meetings that we go to necessary meetings, or are they meetings that are contrived to justify us going?
I felt the meeting with Chief was important both times.
That's not the chamber stuff.
Yeah.
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 The meetings that we
It was
set
an
up,
opportunity that all of us got to
Yes,
sit down with
yeah.
Chief. And if there was nothing like that this year, that could be a different scenario, but I mean, those were beneficial.
ACCG meeting, I think it's very beneficial. Well, they have, of course, next, we don't have this.
I'm sure it does some good.
I'm sure, I mean, when the
But it's
governor walks in the
hard to
reception
measure.
and the commissioners are there, there's got to be some good there, but how do you measure it?
That's what I'm
Just asking a question.
I don't disagree, and I think we've all had the same discussion. I think the key to making profit measurable is for us to set up meetings that are beneficial to this commission, this board, such as the GFA or some other function that happens. I don't know, we can't do that outside of their itinerary.
And when the chamber has a reception for the legislators at the railroad station and depot and all, it is great for some or all of us to be there, I see that. But other than that,
If you simply do that, it's very hard to
I
justify.
mean, we've said in the past, we could do just as well just planning a trip, and setting these things up. But
Well, if we need to talk to DOT, we go. I mean, we go talk to DOT. if there's something else we need, we go do that. I just didn't know if this was,
One time we talked, we set up about the bond financing, and we learned some things that we needed to know. If you make it beneficial, it is, and if you don't, it's not.
We used to meet with DPD about our water and all years ago.
You know, when we first came on board, that, we wasn't really doing that. We just went, and it was just you just meet and kind of fellowship around stuff. But then we started saying, you know, let's get some meetings set up and make it productive.
Well, there's another conversation now with G for that y'all could probably have that would be beneficial, that you and I probably could follow up on that paperwork I gave you on, and get a chance to look at it. It's been mostly a long modification stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a possibility that there will be a beneficial meeting on that for y'all also.
that's where I was headed with that conversation. So if we're going under the auspices of having meetings so that it's beneficial to go, I think that is an issue that we need to see if we can address while we're up there and get that done.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. The only way I can justify my mind spending the money that we spend to go up there is not to go just to support the chamber, which has got some good in it, I realize that, but it's for us to do what we can, okay? And we even, sometimes we've actually split up because you schedule meetings at the same time. Some of us go to EPD, some go wherever to get these stuff. So as long as we kind of keep in mind that that's the point of what we're going for, you know, I think we can justify that.
See, I know that our administrator is going to be given requests by some staff people that's going to want to go as they have.
I've already received one, yes, sir.
And so the whole thing is to give direction as to how do we deal with that.
Yeah, and that, since you brought it up, I have received a request from the chamber to utilize one of our staff members for setting up the depot. They will pay their motel costs, they will pay their fees for the event. I would assume that we would be left with paying their salaries because it's during the week and transportation up there. And I probably need to give Mr. Lott an answer to that too,
So see, there's more to all of this. I mean, it's all the little cost that's.
Well, that doesn't have to be approved.
And it doesn't.
Reality, when we really get down into it, I don't know.
Yeah, he has asked, so I do need to give him an answer. I'm glad you brought it up. I don't know how the board feels about it. If you want to think about it, let me know later, but
This is the same individual that's been going.
been going
Every
each year, yes, sir. And been doing the same thing, been helping set up.
We've never been asked before.
No, but I'm aware that our previous administrator signed off and approved it.
Well, and I guess my question would be, is that one of those things that where it's a benefit to a private organization without a contract
That's,
scenario, that's what, so you just can't always do what we've always done, because some of those things have been problems.
and that's the reason I'm asking, because I'm aware of that, and, you know, we got out of that this year, and now we're in a contract with them. That's for them to provide us services, not for us to be providing them services. And personally, if you want my opinion, I wouldn't approve it. And I said the same thing first of this year when it came across David's desk. I said, I can't see that.
I understand the legality of how it could.
I'd probably be okay with giving her the time off
If she's gonna take a day off,
But if they'll take care of all expenses.
do they have personal days that don't have to be sick days, and you can take a personal day? Is that what we're talking about? Because then we don't have to prove anything, she takes, the person takes a personal day.
Yeah, I mean, if she goes on vacation, I mean, it's completely up to her how she gets there.
If everything else is being paid for.
But I haven't had that discussion with her. I'm assuming she's thinking she's going to get paid for this. I'm just going on a limb.
See, that's just where you get into
She's
the
on salary.
taxpayers paying public employees to do something for a private organization.
It was out. But she wasn't a department head. She should have been, not an employee. Labor for
So I'm sure we're talking about the same person. And see, the we have no authority over their constitutional entity of their own.
Well, that's several elected officials that always go. Keep control of it.
See, doesn't the chamber have staff that can do that? And I don't know what, but I mean, don't they have staff that can do that?
Man, this may be in addition to their staff. But yes, they do have staff.
It is their staff, they won't do that.
Yeah, it'd definitely be more than one person job.
Because the hospital authority will have people there.
What department is, what department is a person from?
The number or the name?
The department. So I didn't ask for the employee name, but after the.
If I tell you there's only two people, it's pretty obvious who it's gonna be.
Sounds like really no big secret about this, is it?
I don't think so.
Where we have a problem.
And to be fair, she brought it to us and Rick brought it to us. Does that make sense? She said, I'm not doing this unless I get approval from my boss. She did not tell them, I'll do it. And then we got asked.
I don't know that you're getting much direction.
No, sir.
I do not,
I think it's based on the deal the agreement we made this year. You know, we was pretty specific that we was trying to separate some things.
I think it's based on what the law says.
And
I do not think that this county should provide personnel for a chamber function event and pay their salary. Is that,
if it was the county,
Is
if it was the board doing it,
The
and
chamber is a
inviting the
private
chamber,
organization.
you know,
The chamber is a private organization, just like any other private organization. So if we're gonna do it for them, how are we not gonna do it for others? And that's the point of the law, protecting that we don't do that. We do things by contractual basis, and that's the way it's in the handbook. Do you disagree? Please feel free to elaborate. Or I could read the paragraph again from
no,
here.
I think that the only thing I would say is, and we've got the contract,
That's what I feel.
and I think that's where we're at with the county.
And I don't want to come across as not supporting the chamber, because I want to be supportive of the chamber, but we have to do it in a proper kind of legal sense.
Well, let me say it this way, would anybody have any issues if she took personal time going up there? The chamber's paying for everything.
No.
And I don't know that that's a possibility, but I'll certainly ask that question.
Then
It
it
doesn't matter.
never,
What,
then it
2 days?
never comes to this
Oh,
board.
so
Two
you-
work days?
It is.
Under this new policy, if you do that, this board's going to know that it was done.
So under this policy, yes, sir, she's requested compensation, it needs to be on form provided by the board, and
And
we'll
I
give
think-
you that update at the end of the month.
I think if I hear, and I'm speaking for all of y'all, so y'all correct me if I'm wrong, I think you would have a hard time with a board looking at an item like that.
But if she does it on personal time, it wouldn't even come
Right.
forward.
Never comes before, if we don't see it, we don't know about it.
I believe it's a Monday and Tuesday this year,
Yeah.
that's correct.
You
Tuesday,
hear
Wednesday? It's during the week,
you
though.
recognize we just had a serious discussion about whether we should even go?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, I think it's clear as mud.
And we will have this discussion again if there's another retreat held. And I did not go to this one because of philosophical reasons, but I went because I wanted to see my twin being born.
And that is something that we should do, is try to encourage them to have, if we're gonna have a retreat, and I think there are some things that are accomplished there, we need to do it somewhere other than where we're
Don't
going.
have a problem with the retreat, but we have a facility in this county that we can do it in county. We do not need to be going to St. Simon's Island or wherever.
Or, you know, it could be at least somewhere driving there, because that is ridiculous amount of money spent to go to the King and Prince.
It's spending taxpayers' money we don't need to spend.
Right.
And you might want to just go ahead and give that thought to Mr. Watt, that, so they can be thinking that.
Passed along. It has been suggested, currently, if you're recording a plat in this county that's larger than, well, any size, quite honestly, we have to come to Springfield to get the plat signed. there's no facility in Springfield for scanning that plat. They now, the Superior Court clerk now requires a scanned TIF copy. They have to drive back to Rankin is the closest place to get that done, scan it, then come back to Springfield to have it signed. The county has the ability to offer that service. We have a large format scanner. We do other things. We make maps, so forth. We could amend our schedule of fees if the board so chose to put a price in there to offer that particular service. The question of the board is that something y'all be interested in doing? I believe $12 seems to be the number. Which one y'all said? I believe $12 is what you can get it done for at Effingham Rankin. So we would think somewhere in that neighborhood. And it's mainly just to keep people from having to drive back to Rankin and then back up to Springfield to have that done. And if, I mean, we could certainly do it, I just didn't know if we would have any opposition to us all.
It's just a digital scan?
It's just, it goes on the CD, we would have to have a CD.
Right.
And we've talked about, we could ask the clerk if we could send it over by email. I don't think we can because I believe that CD has to actually go off to the GSCCA people, but we can find out. So the cost to us will be a CD and staff time to go make the copy.
And that would be done at what, GIS?
GIS, yes. In the same office that zoning is in, when Mr. Shaw signs the plat, they will go to the opposite end of the hall. There's a large format scanner there.
How often does this, I mean, is it?
Daily.
Probably 1 or 2 a day.
Real,
On
okay.
average.
But it's not overburdensome on staff.
That's what I'm saying, not an increase in staff.
No, not at all. 11 and 17 we can make on a regular copy or anything larger than that. We do on a large format, 1824s. We can certainly do it. It's just we haven't in the past. We have no way to charge for that particular service.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's,
I think we're
That sounds
So
We got
we'll
it.
bring the schedule fees back to y'all for an amendment so we can start doing that.
yeah.
We should go to the 27th. I believe we can probably do it on the 27th. It's just finding schedule fees and adding that to it. 17. 17. We'll meet again on the 27th. That's later down.
That's later.
That's later down. And get y'all tired first.
Stephanie will kill you first, so I don't have to worry about that.
I'm going to skim over this one very briefly because we'll bring this back to you on the 17th also. As of January the 1st, 14, our building inspections department wants to do a couple of different things. One is we now use ADG to track all our permits. ADG recognizes a permit number that's assigned to you when you get a building permit. So if you come in and you don't have that permit number, there's no way for them to really tie it to the system. For the most part, I understand it's not an issue. I believe there's a few holdouts that don't like to keep up with the building permit number and call up and say, it's lot so-and-so. Builders deal with lots, we deal with permits. We just are going to request any information that comes in, actually have the building permit number on it. I don't think it's a big thing. I think most people comply with that now. The second thing is, apparently in the 2006 codes, there are already some requirements for, and this pertains mainly to the foam, plastic and insulations, the blown-in insulation that they use in, or not blown-in, but spray insulation, and in particular in attics. There's some thermal barrier requirements and so forth that are in there. And in order to verify that, there's going to be a form that is generated by building inspections that will be requested to be filled out at the time of that inspection. And we're going to ask to begin that in January. I want everybody to know that. On the 17th, I'll bring back to you the actual forms, the letters that will go out. But I just want to get you ahead to be thinking about it.
Is that going to be something that needs to be adopted on the code?
No, sir. Current code requires it. We've not been enforcing it. There's some particular individual that's become adamant that we begin to enforce it for whatever reasons. So we don't believe we have a choice. It is coming.
Okay. But correct me, George, when we did away with these codes, does the present code and will the code that will be enacted in January, does it require, do you know, the fire detector in the attic?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
See, in most jurisdictions, if you use spray foam, they have gone to requiring a smoke detector, heat detector in an attic.
As I understand it, this is to address, to require the thermal barrier because the fire detector is not required. So the thermal barrier is required.
And the reason I ask that, because other jurisdictions have done this, but because that thermal barrier can cost $600-800 to have applied to this foam. They chose to allow for heat detectors to be placed in, and interwired with the rest of them in the house, so that anything that was, which I think is something that most places are used to, and I think that would be a better.
And we can start, it's section R316 of the 2012 International Residential Code is what's being cited here, so we'll check into that. But the letter states an ignition barrier as well as a thermal barrier. So, again, we're not looking to do this until January, so we'll bring it back then for further.
I think the previous action of this board was to do away with all codes that are not contained in the Southern Building Code or the International Code as adopted by the state of Georgia.
Correct.
So if it's in there,
Yeah, International
then we
Building
need to
Code,
enforce it.
Section 2603, International Residential Code, R316, and International Energy Conservation Code, Section 102.
I'm good, but I'm confused by what you said about it is code, but we're not enforcing it, but somebody's raising cane for us to enforce it. Who is that?
I didn't get a name of the door.
I don't know the name either.
It's gotta be somebody that
It's
installs
not-
thermal barriers.
It's not the board, it's not the board of commissioners.
If somebody that wants to sell something.
I believe it's somebody that sells thermal barriers. I don't know who it is.
Like they probably complain to who?
The building department. No, yeah, building department.
I don't understand.
But what I'm saying is we may, as a county, decide to adopt
A change.
a change, but we need to do it the proper way, adopt it, get it approved, go through the proper.
We can't forego the thermal barrier if it's in the code. We can require more, we can require going through DCA and require the smoke detector, but we can't waive.
Are there things that you
The
can,
ignition
that you can
barrier.
do as alternatives? What is that, that's what you're saying that someone else is doing, and is that legal or not?
Yeah, but I don't, and I'm told that's what's been done, or that's what I'm told by other building departments. Now, what's being enacted January 1st, I don't know if we would still have that option. Maybe they're gonna have to do the same thing.
And I don't know, that's a good question for all. If it's in the new code, yeah, we can certainly take a look at all those things. Again, I didn't really want to get, I just want to let you know, coming on the 17th, I intended to get deeper into this conversation with y'all.
Yeah, but I'm telling y'all the stuff that I think you need to be bringing the
I
information
appreciate
back so we'll know what.
And I want to remind you that he told you that you were in control of how long this takes to run.
I understand.
Well, he brings it up, I'm just telling him what we need to consider it.
We're getting close. We're starting to land here, coming down. At the last meeting, we discussed paved road maintenance. You should have in your little packet up there, something starts out with scope of work, stapled together. This is a section, obviously, the scope of work out of the bid document, so I'll put together. It is not 100% complete. We're at 39,600 linear feet. I don't know if that's the following, but what it does do, if you'll start on 01210-4, section number, that's the actual scope of work. You'll see the roads, Fair Street, Foxbow, High Bluff. And what's missing off the mile log are the actual miles. And you can see what we're trying to do, like, and what I've got begin single surface treatment. Those were crack barrier that I had in there at the time. We now have a better solution to that. The GI has a spec out. But just look at it as crack barrier, regardless of what it is. You can see there's leveling in some places. Some places we have full depth reclamation. Some places there's cut and patch. What's missing is actual mile. That's the part where we stop. To tell you start here, stop there. But you can see the streets and kind of what we started with. And then there's a bid estimate behind it that's not 100% done either. You see the quantities you're listing. I believe all the units are in there, all the items. I just don't have the quantities pulled forward yet. So we got like pavement marking, bike shape, because a lot of these have bike lanes on High Bluff, Wiley, Long Ridge. They actually have bike lanes. So anyhow, if you have any questions, please let me know. It's just in there for information for y'all to look over.
I know it's outside of this, but we talked about doing the test road on Ash.
Correct.
What do we need to do to just put
We need to
together
put
some
the specs together, and we will probably default back to the FDR spec that we had put together a year ago now, that we had the French company, I can't remember the name of them, Colas. that they put together. They actually created a full spec for it, so I think we would just default to that, put the bid documents around it. And the pothole that you asked about, Jerry said he's pretty sure they fixed yesterday. He was going to verify.
I haven't had any complaints, I just,
But when I sent it, I asked him, I said he's pretty sure they did it yesterday. No, sir.
This Foxbow Drive, there's the same wording that's under Fair Street.
Correct. These aren't completely done. Foxbow was one that I had not written, so I copied Fair Street down and was going to redo the bylaws. I mean, you may find one or two more like that, because there were one or two placeholders on there. And I believe the fixes are correct from writing again the bylaws, or not, either start here, stop there, kind of thing. Highway 30, I sent the information you sent to me to Ron Nelson, who's the area engineer, asked him for a schedule, and he called me as soon as we started this meeting. Obviously, I didn't take that call, so as soon as I can get back, I'll find out what he said.
That's the only call I get.
He
I
did.
mentioned last meeting that there was a 4-inch drop. The guy, another individual called me and went out and took a picture. And it's a good drop off the 30, and the cars are scraping, so.
So I sent all that to him so he could see it too. He did call me back just right after we started this meeting, so I'll hopefully have an answer tomorrow on that.
Where is that?
Old Oak Drive, I believe is the actual road, but there's several that's got my drop off.
You should have in your packets up there 2 different job descriptions for county administrators. One is red line and one is not. The red line version are changes from the current description, the one that presented y'all at the workshop. Is where we changed it. The other one is basically we accepted the changes so that it was read a lot better, and it's the same information, but it is reorganized. In other words, it doesn't start saying, here's duties for a meeting, here's duties for a community event, here's the other duties for a meeting. It's arranged in a more logical manner, but it's the same information. But we did red line one just to show you the changes from the existing, from when we started.
So the red lines became gray lines?
We just accepted the changes so that it's a finished document.
They're
They're
not red.
not red, they're printed on a non.
Like gray line?
But the one without any markings is incorporated.
Yes, the one without any markers is incorporates all the changes. And I'm sorry, somebody got run on a non-color printer. I'll let me get y'all that fixed, get it back out to you. Again, the other one is exactly the same. It just doesn't show you what was changed. I really want to have this on your 17th agenda for y'all approval. So if y'all have any changes, suggestions, please send them back. And that's all I have.
You want to share anything?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one other thing on my list. You also have in front of you a picture that was done by Husky Bell Young in cooperation with J.M. Woods, who is a land planner. And I don't know when. It was done sometime in the past. I don't know if there's a date on it or not. I'm not sure that either Adam or I really knew that they even existed until we started asking around. So that is a picture of what they did sometime in the past. I thought it was a good place to start. It shows a lot of different activities. It shows a lot of different things that can be done. I wanted to get it to y'all. After I got this, I actually stumbled across another folder full of a bunch of Atlas stuff and started digging through it. And we actually have environmental site assessments that were done on the site. There was some remediation. I have correspondence on all of that. There was a final letter from the EPD blessing everything. There was actually some environmental work on the black stuff, whatever that is, on the block plant property, the other 3 acres that's in there. And it never identified it, but it basically said it was not anything that was a threat. It just needed to be hauled off. So we actually have a lot of information, and I've got a stack about this thick in there. I wanted to copy and give y'all to it around the time today. I will scan that and get it out to y'all.
Well, that's positive.
But this was done back when there was consideration by the state.
For state park, that's correct.
Start.
This is the other piece that goes with what I previously gave y'all, this little pamphlet for the state park. That's the part that goes with it. I did see that. There was correspondence where this was sent to our delegation, was brought in, and there was a lot of stuff that happened it died for whatever reasons. I don't know that part mattered to me so much because it was done and over with. I think it was.
There's also probably property we don't own, you're trying to own that.
Correct. There is property we do not own somewhere. If you look the far left side by the river, we do not own that. The access going off of 80 goes to a piece of property that we do not own. So I'll point out all that. We're working towards getting an actual CAD file on that so we can make modifications ourselves, but I thought we ought to look at it and start beginning to think about it. I'll get you the other documentation.
This would be a huge project here, I just won't open it. But this is nice.
But it can be done in phases. I mean, like the whole walking trail around the top. There's some decisions to make. The reclamation, we'll go back up, the mining permit that the county has is for reclamation only. I never found a reclamation plan. Steve, did you find it? I know you said it was just a master plan for a state park. So there's still some digging to do there as to what the reclamation plan even is. We may have to do some re-permitting, but some of that is in place. That was done in 4 or 5, I believe, the actual mining permit. I have copies of that. I'll provide y'all all that. I found a bunch of good data that's going to save us some time on the front end of what we're trying to do. We already have it. I really
Were we able to call the people that got the contract for the work on 80 to
No.
push that?
I have not.
And George, any progress with the owner of the?
Yes.
Next Monday,
Next Monday.
at 10 to 9 o'clock.
I
I should have sent you a meeting invite on that.
The owner of
If you did, I had seen it.
would have been
Mr. Arnold,
this afternoon.
yeah, Mr. Arnold, that owns the 3 acres, was the block plan in the middle of this. We have a meeting, was set up today, actually, with him Monday at 9 o'clock here in that room. So anybody available, just don't bring more than 3, I'll come on
Ron?
the shifts. Sir? Bruce.
Bruce. Well, if you turn this into a park, won't the whole outside, the banks of it have to be sloped or won't?
There will definitely be some sloping. That's the decision that needs to be made. Can we leave the backside unsloped? We can't ever close out the mining permit without doing it. In fact, there's documentation in 2005, I believe, that Mr. Arnold tried to close the mine out, and EPD sent him back a nice list, and most of what it said was, you know, slope these banks 3 to 1. So we had to either completely slope them. However, interestingly enough, there's prices in there for doing that. It was priced out by a local contractor, OMI. Now, it was 5 years ago, but it would give us some semblance of it was $280,000 to $300,000
So the EPD would be the one to make a decision,
for reclamation, yes, sir.
because that's what we can talk about.
Is there room to slope some of these?
Sorry?
Is there room to slope?
No, sir. I believe if I read the thing right, what they were looking to do was bring the road down some so that it could be sloped out, but you still got a back slope. I mean, I don't know how that works, quite frankly. There was a tremendous amount of dirt they were gonna move.
That's the problem with that place is they dug all the way.
See, and all those things, from a 5,000 foot view, you gotta put a dredge back in there and pump sand up to the bank. That was my fault the whole time. I don't think you could haul enough in there to do it any other way. I don't know where you get a dredge, I don't know who owns the dredge, I don't know what that would cost.
I got one right here.
Other than that, yes, it's fair dredge, we can borrow only on days and in the wild. So yes, sir, I'm sorry, Alice was in there too, and I will provide y'all rest of that documentation.
But see, I think the big part of getting anything done with this is to get that easement dealt with and get those old buildings dealt with, that old black stuff, which is all on somebody else's property.
And we'll start
I
that
think
on
we're
tonight.
making progress is what we're saying.
We'll know tonight how comfortable he is to move forward. So, the night, next Monday at 9. I have a problem with dates tonight.
But at least it's not sitting there. We're talking about it.
Yeah. And again, I have a bunch of useful information that I thought we wanted to recreate, so I'll do some of that. Jail progress report, you have that included. Progress report for the jail construction.
Yeah,
included in the packet. For the
It's
readability of clears.
purple and yellow. It looks purple and yellow. I think it's probably just a resolution.
It's yellow and blue now.
No, they changed it to purple and
The
yellow.
colors don't show up well, that's why don't pay attention to that.
They are blue and pink.
I think it's just the color on here.
Yeah, it's the color, it's not the real color.
Here's
share with us, this other document?
On the document.
Very nice words the board might like to hear.
Oh, I just thought that's up for your own perusal. It's just a little something that, you know, because everybody doesn't know everything that, every building that touches this one. So it has nothing to do with me or us, it was just, yeah,
Gotcha.
positive story.
Any other staff? Mr. Leota?
Pardon me while I take a minute. Pardon me, talking about the rid of cream. On the next agenda, we're going to have, appears to be 3 deed acceptance. 2 of the 3 are roads that were on the list that were approved by the board previously. One of them, in one case, the developers actually addressed all the punch list items anyway, and has a deed pending to us that we should get this week that we should be able to go on the next agenda. One of them is a road that they have paid the taxes and provided a deed. We do have some pending comments on the deed, but we should have that back to you as well. The third one is a little more interesting, and I want to take a couple of minutes to discuss it. It's Red Oak subdivision. It was, as you all may recall, proposed to be added to the list at the meeting, and then removed from the proposed to be added to the list at the meeting due to a concern that someone raised regarding the fact that there are no houses in the subdivision. That one has been requested to be, I have a deed for that one as well. It has some modifications that need to be made to the deed, but regardless, it is going to be on the next agenda. The complicating factor with this one is water and sewer. There's a lift station associated with this with a multiple page punch list, 2.5 full pages of issues with the pump station. The question really becomes, the developer is asking, and the current deed version that we have is asking for the board to take ownership of all infrastructure in the subdivision. The question I would have for the board at this point is there any reason why you, A, don't want to see that on the agenda because you're not willing to accept the water and sewer, so let's just go ahead and get them to fix it before we put it on the agenda? Or would you prefer to us just go ahead and put it on the agenda as an acceptance of every long-haul thing, even though this wasn't on the list, and even though it has very significant water and sewer issues? This is going to be very complicated, and I don't want to try to do all of this at the next meeting with them here in the context of a vote to approve. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are in advance so that we can be prepared for discussion with that.
What's the details on the lift station as far as, is it a system improvement or a project improvement? Is it just serving
This
that project
serves only this subdivision, so it is strictly a project
So
improvement.
then why would we want to accept it without them fixing it?
I certainly wouldn't suggest it, but they're asking for us to do so. In the context of the board has been willing to accept roads that are not standard and are not punch list addressed. So why wouldn't you be willing to accept a pump station of the same non-standard, non-punch list addressed variety? I'm not saying that I agree with that. I'm just saying that's what the developer says. So they says, here's your deed. You can accept the whole doggone thing.
Well, personally, this is a road that has no construction on it whatsoever.
Yes, so there are no houses in this subdivision.
Presently, there's a telephone pole lying across the road to
Yes,
keep
sir.
people from going up it.
That's correct, assuming it would be removed if the board accepted the road itself.
The only issue is the age-old question whether how old it is, and do we already have it or not?
This one was approved in March of 2008, prior to the change of the ordinance in May of 2009. So clearly, the ordinance as written at the time required them to retain the ownership of the road and all the rest of the infrastructure for 1 year, and then bring it up to standard, address all punch lists, and then turn it over to the county. That never happened until now. They are wanting to, the reason for this to come up isn't just the issue with the list, so to speak, but that they supposedly have a buyer who's interested in building some houses in there. Now that's a whole nother question, and it's really not what I want to get drugged into this conversation into. Let's try to keep it on the subject of the infrastructure, but there is a recorded plat and there are recorded lots, and there is infrastructure in the ground. So they are wanting to turn the infrastructure over, but there's The question really becomes, ultimately, is one step past that, is the board willing to restrict or not restrict building permits in that subdivision as a result of what we do with this infrastructure or not? So keep that in mind in the background, but let's try to focus on the infrastructure itself.
How does this differ, case in point, of Blandford Crossing? Blandford Crossing was there, it was built out. The pump station was not operational in the beginning. Do we have the roads in Blandford Crossing?
Yes.
And
I wouldn't say that this is substantially different from Blandford Crossing, frankly.
Same thing.
Right. Now, if you'll bear with me for 1 minute, I'll tell you whether or not Blandford Crossing.
That lift station was a system improvement, I believe.
No, sir.
No.
No, sir. It's not a system and Blandford Crossing is also not on the list. So as far as I would say, they're very, very similar. Red Oak and Blandford Crossing both have a project improvement lift station, and neither of them are on the list. But they're not asking for us to take ownership of it today. They've not provided us with a deed as of yet. I have a deed from Red Oak, so that's why this one is being put forward on the agenda on the 17th, because they're asking for us to do so.
But where I'm getting to is, he says he's got somebody ready to start building.
Well, he says that, yes.
Blandford Crossing, we refuse to issue building permits.
Well, temporarily, yes, sir.
That's correct.
That's been addressed and taken care of.
Until those issues were dealt with.
Well, we only dealt with them, let's be clear now, the issues that were required to be dealt with Blandford Crossing were simply to make the lift station operational, not to make it standard or to address all punch list items. It was simply to make it operational. This lift station is probably operational.
Okay.
It has previously been started up right about the time that the final plat was approved in 2008.
But it's
been
probably dry rotted.
the pumps have been sitting in the hole for 5 years. Yes, sir. So I don't know that they're necessarily.
Today, it's not operational.
Today, we can't guarantee that it is, and we don't own it, so we can't go out there and turn it on.
All I'm about is treating everybody the same.
I completely agree.
So what I'm saying is, we held Blandford Crossing to the standard, you got to get it operational before your permits. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think this board would ask for no less from somebody else. You've got to show us before this board would consider accepting that infrastructure, that it be deemed operational.
And I completely agree, and do keep in mind, that's not what they're asking. They're asking for us to accept not just that, but also more focused on this, the ownership of the actual lift station. They want to go ahead and give it to us now, as is.
I understand, and rightly so. If we will take it and bear the cost of fixing it,
Right.
Why would they not?
The question becomes at this point, does the board want to separate the issues with the lift station and the water and sewer from the issue with the road proper? Or does the board want to make sure that those issues are handled together? This becomes very complicated, obviously, from multiple different perspectives. So I certainly don't disagree with anything that's been said up to this point. And I can go back to them and say, if the board is of this opinion, that these two issues need to be separated, and they need to come back with us with a deed that is for the road only, and that we can move forward with that. That's fine.
Well, I'm speaking for myself, but not for a board. So
Absolutely.
you understand?
Yes, sir.
Personally, and I don't know the legalities of it, but I would not be in any way, shape, or form wanting to accept the lift station. It's not a system, it's a project improvement. So we don't need it to operate anything else.
Yes, sir.
But I certainly, the roads, if they're minimal punch lists, I don't have a problem with taking the roads. So I think the answer to your question would be we want to deal with it separately.
Does everybody else feel sort of the same way or differently, or is there significant differences in opinion amongst the board members?
I think you look at it separately.
Is everybody
I
nodding?
think originally, my opinion would be, is that based on their agreement, the development agreement, that they were going to finish the whole subdivision and then punch list it and turn it over to the county. But in light of some possible legal issues with the road, may or may not be, at the very most, I'd be okay with accepting the road if it doesn't have a huge punch list or something.
I can tell you, if there's two items.
And with it closed off, it can't have much damage and no construction in there. It's probably
there's two items, I'll read to you, there's real quick. At the back of the cul-de-sac, there's a large area of curb and gutter paving that has settled and needs to be saw cut and repaired, and then inspected by Effingham County before acceptance. There's also a crack in the asphalt that will need to be repaired. So they are fairly minor. I would actually defer to Toss as to whether or not he would caution these things to be minimal in, as the other 56 are quote unquote minimal.
With economic damage, with no construction traffic, or with a settlement with no construction traffic.
5 years of sitting, right, this was in August of 2013 when this inspection was done.
I have this question on protection of citizens that want to, any citizen wants to go in there and buy a lot. We've got a recorded plat, they can go in there and buy a lot. If the pump station doesn't work and it's to access county water and sewer, what does that mean? Should there be any protection for that citizen when they buy a lot in a recorded subdivision or not?
It's part of the due diligence, I would think. I mean, first thing you do when you buy a lot is you go find out about county water and sewer. You don't.
Yeah, but you've already bought.
You don't think there's a reasonable expectation when you buy in a county with a recorded plat, in a subdivision, that there's a reasonable, that has county water and sewer, that the pump station works? I'm not saying let's pay for it, but I'm trying to ask this legal question because I think.
Not in a subdivision that's basically been abandoned for 5 years, no damage done. With no houses
I
in it.
think that would fall
If
under.
there were houses in it, I think the expectation is different, but no, I don't.
Especially with a log line.
Now, didn't we, at Blanford Crossing, we denied building permits until the lift station was operational, correct?
Operational,
I think
yes,
we were
sir.
all,
Was that
Yeah,
legal?
everybody agreed with
Is that
that.
legal? Can you?
I don't know, though, we did it.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the thought process wasn't, I'm sorry.
Remember, the lift station's on a separate piece of property. You can go pull the title, but it's not tied to the county. The parcel's not tied to the county.
And the thought process was obviously, and I don't want to sound like I don't care whether it's legal, obviously legal is very important in the matter, but obviously the practicality side of that situation was, let somebody build a house and they're going to flush the toilet and it doesn't go anywhere. So, it's fairly important that the lift station be functional from that perspective. Now, that only just gets you one more step down the road though, because now if you want to go back to Blanford Crossing, not that I'm trying to sully this issue even more, but now they're building houses and the lift station is, while it's functional, it's not standard and it certainly isn't owned by the county and it still has a punch list that needs to be addressed. So
Would you say
as more and more houses are built in there, there's more and more expectation that the pump station is quote unquote adequate or whatever word you want to
Are we requiring the
use.
same thing on all pump stations?
Ma'am?
Are we requiring the same thing on all pump stations?
Certainly. Code, minimum standard, nothing out of the ordinary, yes ma'am.
Generators?
This one doesn't have a generator, no ma'am.
That's what I'm trying to say is, when you're saying we held one subdivision to getting it operational, but not fully something. And then if they come to us and say it's operational and they can start it up, then does that meet that standard? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well,
We're trying
that's-
to say treat everybody equal. Are we doing that?
Well, just to back up to Blanford Crossing, I mean, we did go out there with the representative of the pump manufacturer and we turned it on and they verified that everything turned on and operated. Now again, that doesn't mean that the punch list has been addressed and that everything is perfect, but that it will actually turn on. So that when the house becomes occupied, the toilet will flush, it will go to the lift station, it will pump into our system and
Just because the pump
function.
sewage doesn't mean that the fence is put around the station, or
Right.
the rock is put in, or the,
Right.
all the.
Or that
multiple
all
things.
electrical issues meet code. Right, I mean, there's plenty of, and this one in particular has
So
2 pages worth of electrical items.
Is, what Ms. Jones is asking is, in that scenario where we're allowing somebody to build houses in there because their pumps work, although the pump station's not completed with all the things that have to be done for it to be accepted by the county, when somebody goes there and buys a lot, is it reasonable that they're expecting that everything in here is working fine?
That's a legal question.
I do say for tonight's purposes, just as far as tonight's conversation, I totally agree that we can keep the pump station and the road separate as a decision. I agree with
And
that.
if that's what I hear from the preponderance of the board members, I will go back to them and let them know that we have at least discussed this preliminarily in open session and that the feeling of the board is that these items need to be addressed separately. so that they can come back to us with a deed for the road proper, not a deed for the road and the water and sewer and the lift station and all at one time.
And I would say if you could explain to them that if they say that the pump station, if it's their position that's operational, they need to be prepared to have somebody be able to inspect it and prove that.
Do a punch list on it.
There is a punch list. I mean, there's a 2.5-page punch list on it, and one of them is because the pumps have not been run in over 4 years at that time, they need to be.
Further than what we're talking about too now, another thing is the reason we accepted the roads that we accepted was because there's people living on these roads and they expect their roads, to be taken over, all the reasons that we did that. In this case here, this road, there is nobody on this road.
That's correct.
In my opinion, this road needs, the punch list items need to be done by the developer and for the road, separate the road out, and then we can accept the road.
Well, I think that's a question, and I would agree for the record, but I think that's going to be for the action of the board to take. I think the direction Steve was asking for, whether it's to present it as a combined thing or as two separate things.
I say separate.
Okay. We will have them separate these two issues. If they are unable to provide us with the deed this week separating the items, it may or may not appear on the next agenda. I will also caution you that the other development that's going to be on your agenda next time is another one that doesn't have houses. So do keep that in mind when you come up for a vote next time.
Coming to you, bring forward any of these roads that have homes on them already? I mean, how
We
does
have
this
one-
pop up that?
This particular developer walked into my office a couple weeks ago and said, "We're ready to turn this stuff over."
People can get you.
Yes.
What is
There is-
for the road? Is it very extremely minimal? I don't know. I'm sure
I would have to give this punch list to you, and you would have to tell me whether or not you consider this minimal as it relates to the other ones.
I just thought it was.
There was only one issue. It talks about some settling it, and I went through there very quickly. I don't recall seeing that, but I went through quickly. I mean, it could be there. Other than that, it was grass and, silly stuff. Yeah.
Now, there's only two.
I think that needs to be submitted to us along with a request. I mean, I think that was clear when we talked about this. Each item, each time we're asked to accept one, we need a list of actually what we're accepting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I believe that was y'all's motion before, that anytime we bring a deed, we bring back to you a list of the anticipated cost
That's
of
correct.
repairs of that road. Yes, sir, that will.
Well, that hasn't been done in this. The cost estimating has not been done in this case.
Well,
So we'll have to do that between now and the next meeting.
I personally expect to see that.
And that was Cameron Oaks, right?
Cameron Oaks, yes, and Red Oak.
And
Red Oak.
Yeah, but Red Oaks is the one we're talking about, whether we.
But if we separate it, it'll be brought back to them as a request for the road on.
Yeah, well,
Thank you. I apologize for the length of that. Has anybody other any other thoughts before I disappear?
Ready to get out of here before 8 o'clock.
No, we got minutes of it.
While I'm standing here,
Upset.
did mention Effingham Day at the Capitol. We did mention EPD, and if somebody wants me to do something in relation to putting together a meeting with EPD, somebody let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Floyd mentioned that might be a good time to talk to them about the owls.
Yeah. Or about their
Well, the EPD, you can actually get the person that closes out the mining permits, they'll come and tell you. I mean, because that, as far as talking to EPD, it's just a mining closeout. So, they're here every 2-3 months.
Better done here than there.
Yes, yeah.
Correct.
But now, as far as talking about water, sewer, stuff like that, that's the, you can talk about there.
Anything else? Ms. Joanne?
The only thing that I would mention is we did go through a rating process again with Moody's on behalf of the IDA because they were redoing some of their bonds. We were affirmed with our current rating of the AA2, which basically means that we have high quality, very low risk as far as credit. So that was good to have them reaffirm us, even with the current 6/30/2013 financials. And we did receive notice today that we will be losing part of our funding for the senior citizens. They have had budget reductions. Our portion of about an $800,000 reduction is going to be about $15,000 decrease in our current funding for meals.
From the state?
From the state.
We'll lose 15,000.
Yes.
There goes the new roof.
Anybody got a spare part?
The county kept our good moving. The
Yes.
IDA,
Getting any
One
benefit
down.
from that.
they dropped.
One.
Adam, do the rooftop units, do they drain onto the roof?
That one doesn't have rooftop units.
They're outside courtyard as you walk in, by generator.
Any other
One way to
staff?
help it.
The real, his question was crickets.
Our attorney is standing. Do you have something you want to say?
No, sir.
Or you just want to stand?
Just walking.
Just want to leave.
Any commissioners?
My legs are numb.
We had talked about we mentioned whatever we were gonna ask staff to do with Rankin during staff report, so I don't think want to reiterate that.
I think we got it.
I think you got it.
You good?
You got it? I reiterated it.
I believe I understood y'all say move forward with preparation of some sort of agreement with them.
We need to work with their council and our council to get an acceptable legal agreement
I don't read it, that means.
and provide that as a presentation to us for adoption or consideration. Next meeting. So we can vote it after that. Anybody else?
Adam, over at the old courthouse, the signs and the stuff over there with Linda and them, did you get with them?
I did not, but I will make progress on that. I apologize.
I had to go back the other day, it's about the signs and stuff inside there. Linda is prepared to buy the signs through her budget. And when I was over there the other day, I asked her, had she heard anything? She said no. So she asked me, she said, if I go ahead and get the signs, will you back me up on it? So,
I'll get with her.
How
I'll
about
send an
you
email
text
tonight
her?
before I get home.
but they got, paper signs.
We probably need, like you said, we need to have some additional discussion. We're locking all the doors with the back door. There's no parking in the back door. People don't know that. They go to all three doors trying to get to the back door.
I did.
We gotta have some more conversations about what we do instead of just buying signs.
Well, she would like to have deputies put back over there, and we've had that discussion. Do away with the blue code. Have another thing, solid off.
Oh, you need. Can we get new flags out here? That's kind of a sticker on those.
Certainly.
Okay.
We have a cabinet full of them that just came in today.
Yeah. We'll work on that.
I'll make sure to keep the lights on all the time.
Anything else, Phil? Steve? Rick? Rick? Bart? Any other staff? The paper's dying for Anthony to get out of here and do something. Do we have a need for an executive session?
Yes, sir.
We do?
Yes, sir.
I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to go into executive session where we will discuss personal property and pending litigation.
I need to stand.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? So adjourned into executive session. Back in regular session. Any other business to come before the commission? We have no executive session minutes to approve because we didn't have executive session last meeting. No other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.